What's up, Yellowjackets fans? Pete here from the Lasser Cast, and I'm with my co-host with the Jaws shirt, Mr. Danny Torkel, Dr. Zayas God. He's got a Jaws mug. I'm sure he's wearing Jaws boxers too. We're going to take off those boxers and deep dive into this episode of Yellowjackets Season 2 finale, storytelling. Danny, my wife Sherry T, who I reviewed the first season with, she walked out of the show 20 minutes in and didn't come back. When I told her what happened last night, she's kind of glad she didn't come back. Did you talk to your sister yet about the show?
I didn't. I was out last night and I drank a little bit, and I had one of those nights that a 40-year-old plus man should not have, where I was up trying to get rid of the evil. So I tried watching last night, and I saw some of the parts of the episode, and I remember thinking last night, I don't know if I like this too much. But then I just rewatched it, and I caught everything that I missed, and I definitely did not dislike this episode. It's been a weird couple of episodes for me, I feel, because 2 weeks ago I was so passionate about how much I enjoyed episode 7. I called it maybe my favorite episode of the series. I said it was definitely my favorite episode of this season. And then I think, you absolutely did not enjoy it as much as I did.
No.
Last week, I felt we were more on the same page with where I had done a complete 180 and went from like, oh my God, I love this episode, to starting to basically question everything about the show.
Yeah.
And now I'm somewhere in the middle. I really liked a lot of this episode. There were also parts that I think we said last week our biggest issue was the pacing of certain things. And I thought these last 2 episodes tried really hard to give the audience what it had not given them for almost 7 full episodes of this season, with the exception of, obviously, I think it was episode 2 where Jackie is eaten, and that was like the whole shit, here we go. And then it just kind of felt like a bunch of building block episodes. And then all of a sudden they realized, oh crap, we only have 2 episodes left. Let's throw everything we can at the screen. And, we got to see in back-to-back episodes, card drawing ceremonies, masked hunts. We got to see, the wilderness choosing, and we got to see cannibalism. And I feel like this is the kind of stuff we wanted to see in episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we had to wait until the finale, and now it's over, and we're just kind of like, so now we have to wait another year. So I know how much you and Sherry loved this show last year. So for somebody like Sherry, who was on, you guys got a ton of clicks and comments and likes on your videos for season 1 over on Anchor Pete channel.
Yeah.
For her to turn away at the end of this season, it does say something sort of profound about the direction the show went this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let's unpack that, right? Because the name of the episode is called Storytelling. And I saw on Twitter last night, it's kind of funny because like Ashley Lyle, one of the show's creators, I think like kind of the main creator of the show, she was saying, oh, is this like a rite of passage to get death threats? And she was talking about like, oh, I think some people didn't like the show or this season, and some people did. The main problem here is not the acting. That's for sure. They have incredible actresses on this show, and in the past and in the present, everyone is doing a great job. It is the literal storytelling choices. That's the upsetting part. Because it's not even like stupid dialogue, or like it's not even like this sort of melodramatically shot thing. It's literally the choices that they're making. And I think that as I kind of listed the story choices to Sherry, that's when she was like, oh, that sounds horrible. So let's address the very first thing, the very first issue that she had, which is kind of at the very beginning of the episode. The episode begins with Travis by the cabin, and he's kind of wondering what's happening. And what was the song that was playing? Do you remember? It was like a song. I was like, oh, okay, that's
It
from
was
our
Zombie by the Cranberries.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love the Cranberries. I like that song "Linger" a lot better than "Zombie," but whatever. So it's a good song to have, like as they're coming back with Javi on a, like he's like a hog basically. They brought back from the hunt, and so Sherry was upset with the fact that Travis ate Javi, or like he participated in eating Javi, and I understand that. I think that they try to justify it. Van has this sort of cult leader conversation with Travis, and she says, "Let him help you. Let like his death be worth it." And I think that if you buy into that kind of bullshit, maybe you would eat a sibling, but I just find it very unlikely that someone would eat a relative. What were you gonna say?
I did like that part. I think that was the part where Liv Hewson, as young Van, where she says something to the effect of, I'm not ashamed of being alive, and we shouldn't be ashamed of being alive. And I think that there is a lot to that when you're in the scenario that they're in, when you're making the decisions that they're making, that like, you get to a point where, it's live or die, and you're going to do things because of this situation that you would never, ever do. You're going to do, things that 25 years later, you're not telling anybody about.
Right.
I did like the dialogue. And again, I think it comes back to what you said earlier. It's the acting is good, and some of the dialogue is delivered really well, and the song choices are great. But there's just something about the decision making over these last few episodes that leaves a lot. Like it either feels like just the things were happening too quickly, or it feels like, everyone. There was this great moment a few episodes back where you have the 6 women together with this panoramic shot of the compound. As the episode's ending, Lottie is in the distance. You see the symbol cut out of like the lawn, and it's like, oh my God, they're finally back together. And then it feels like from that moment on, they were like, we should have done this 3 episodes ago, because now we got to like run, race through everything.
Yeah.
And this episode almost felt cliche in the way that we need to get Shauna's family, we need to get Walter, we need to get the cops, we need to get everyone who you've seen in 2021 who's still alive at this compound at the same time, to build to this big ending that wraps up multiple storytelling threads.
Yeah.
And it just felt like kind of a lazy cliche style of doing that. Like, they followed the dad and Callie, the Jeff and Callie, and now the cops are here. And at the same time, the women are masked and hunting each other. And Jill, Lisa is there. And it just all kind of felt like very convenient. I guess is the word.
I'm glad that you used that word though, because one of the YouTube channels I watch, I forget what it's called. It's like Behind the Screenplay, I think, right? And it basically has like audio clips of writers of some of my favorite shows, and they talk about the decisions that they make. And it's just like a montage of audio clips, right? 2 of the most recent ones, I watched one on Succession, and I watched one on Better Call Saul. 2 shows I absolutely adore, right? And one thing you would hear often in Succession and on Better Call Saul would be like, we have to make the decisions based on what the character would do. Like, we don't try to plot like we don't try to make the characters act around the plot. We make the plot work around the characters' choices, what they would naturally do. And I do think that Juliette Lewis probably wanted off the show because of that one interview where she seemed so unhappy, and she's gone now, right? Spoilers for this episode, but Nat is gone. And I think they had to work around Nat dying as an adult. And I don't know if I mentioned this during our last review, but I don't like that storytelling choice either, because you have Nat in the past who you're rooting for, who's my favorite character on the show, past Nat. And now it's like, oh, okay, well, her life leads up to being stabbed by Misty with a syringe and dying in the woods, right? And being on a fucking airplane, like in some kind of weird passage to the afterlife. But that's what I think is the problem. I think that's what's probably bothered a lot of people that watch this show, is that there have been these weird plot choices that often feel like, well, people are expecting this to happen, so we have to throw them for a loop, and so we're going to make this happen. So, like,
Chris said something in our group chat where he said it was a really strange decision. Like, it takes all the tension last episode out of the card scene when the person who draws the Queen of Hearts is somebody we know for a fact lives.
Right.
So it takes all of the tension away from, are they going to kill Nat? Because the answer is a resounding no, obviously not.
Right.
And I think that was my point last episode, was they should have had a scene where they picked the Queen of Hearts. It was one of the random girls in the background. They killed her. And then it's now a month or so later, they're hungry again, and now they're getting like the hang of it, and they start to do it more often than they might need to. And then maybe Nat draws the card, which leads to Hobby drowning. This whole season, like last season ends with like Nat ready to blow her brains out, and she's kidnapped. And so season 1 ends with Nat being rescued from suicide, only to have her die as the last part of season 2.
Yeah.
It really does kind of make that whole story arc rather pointless. And like, what I mentioned this last episode, what was the point of having, yes, I get it, like Nat needed to become friends with this girl at the camp so that she makes the choice to save her at the end. But like, we spent half an episode with her going to this girl's mom's house to save a fish. And it just feels like I'm saying these things and they sound like ridiculous things in retrospect.
Yeah.
Like, and it just didn't feel like a fair payoff to that character. And like you said, Sophie Thatcher, who I assume is still going to be in the show because she's alive, and especially to juxtapose the scene where Nat, as an adult, Juliette Lewis, is effectively killed off the show, to juxtapose that with Lottie effectively saying the wilderness chose the next leader, and like everybody is like bowing to Nat.
Right.
And it's this like cool moment where like the person who has been the skeptic the whole time is now effectively going to be the leader. And maybe she becomes that antler queen that we saw in the very first episode. And maybe season 3 has Sophie Thatcher as the antler queen, but now she's dead. So like it's just, like it comes back to these decisions that were made. Like, it just felt like Walter Ex Machina, where like he just, after 2 seasons of this Adam storyline, like we both said it last week, that Elijah Wood will come back and he'll probably solve the whole situation, and he does.
Right.
In I'm sitting on my bed a little hungover, and I'm looking and going, this Kevin's just gonna drink that tea. He's just
hot chocolate.
He's just gonna drink this drink that a random guy who like he thinks works at a cult compound hands him.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
Right. It's too contrived. It's that idea of doing the character actions around the plot versus what the character would do. He's a cop. He's a trained professional. He's a skeptical cop that's looking into this investigation. And he's just like, I'll take that. Gold glug. I was like, okay, he's poisoning him. I know that the big reveal for Walter was that he was like, oh, he's this dangerous killer. He's a mastermind. He might be a threat to the Yellowjackets now. And One of the things that bothered me the most about this last episode was when Mustache Cop confronts him and he's by the car, and then I guess he just shoots uh the other cop in the trunk,
Yeah.
right? I think I looked away for a second, then I'm like, what the fuck? So he's just shooting him in the trunk, and then he spins this tale of like how the other cop was corrupt and that it's like they're gonna like cover up his murder. I couldn't even follow that. I'm
Basically, they were gonna frame Kevin for Adam Martin's murder,
like, okay,
and say that the investigation into Shauna was basically to get the heat off of him, and if the other cop doesn't go along with it, then he'll just kill him too. And so, whenever I would get into Twitter arguments, tangent for a second. Whenever I would get into Twitter arguments about Halloween Ends,
oh no,
my entire argument was always, you could like Halloween Ends, but you cannot tell me that David Gordon Green back in 2018 is making Halloween 2018 and thinking this is where the trilogy is going.
Yeah,
We're going to build it up so that a nerdy teenager takes over the powers of Michael Myers, and a character that we've never met in 2 movies becomes the main character of part 3. The audience will love it. Nobody will ever convince me of that.
Right.
To me, that was oh shit, they want a trilogy now. We got to throw together some stuff for the next 2 movies.
Right.
Nobody will ever convince me, back to Yellowjackets, that when the Addams story started, that this was the end point that they had in mind. Nobody will ever be able, and the writers of the show can come into my bedroom right now and say, no, Dan, this is what we had planned. And I would look at them and go, was it though? like you wasted a season and a half on the Adam Martin story for Walter to tie it all up in a bow by framing a cop that grew up with Nat. It makes no sense. And
well, for you to not believe,
we just spent so much time on it.
Yeah. And for you to like question whether he would drink the hot chocolate or not, or think it doesn't make sense, or it's sort of like wrapped up too easily. Mustache Cop, he's a guy that you had problems with for this whole season. You didn't like him. But one of the parts of his character was that he was so determined to win the case, so determined to be proven right, that he would go pull a guy's used condom out of the garbage pail and sniff it. You know, he's like dead
while
set
seducing a teenage girl.
While seducing a teenage girl. I mean, he's searching the hotel without a search warrant. Like, this guy is like clearly ruthlessly working towards his goal. He's excited about winning. And this one guy comes over and tries to frame him, and he just like folds.
Buckles. Yeah.
It just buckled. It makes no sense. That's the thing of like, it's just serving the story versus, I think, because people would have been annoyed if this Adam thing went to another season. They're like, all right, well, at least this is fucking wrapped up. Right. So
yeah. And I think the biggest issue is we're 18 minutes, almost 19 minutes into this video, and really we're not even really talking. We're talking about the episode, but in like a background form of how this episode fit within the story threads from season 1 and with the rest of this season.
Yeah.
As a 60-minute television episode, I want to make it very clear. I thought this was a good episode of television. I thought it was, again, the acting is tremendous. There were some amazing moments of acting.
Yeah.
I thought that even going back to the beginning of the episode, the idea of like Misty forcing the leadership onto Lottie, and Lottie like not wanting it and like being put into a position that she didn't want, I thought was great, because again, it really. But now I'm just thinking about how this relates back to the rest of the story. And basically, it almost feels like this is now 2 seasons in. This is really just a story of a happy-go-lucky serial killer couple, Misty and Walter. And Misty and Walter kill everybody. They they have no moral qualms with any of the things they're doing. They are psychopaths.
Right.
And they obviously, Walter has the resources and the knowledge to get away with these things.
Right.
And so season 2 ends. Lottie is being taken to a mental institution.
Right.
Thaisa and Van are there. But again,
Right.
Van has terminal cancer, apparently.
Yeah.
Thaisa, I think I remember, still has a wife in a coma and a son somewhere.
Something's going on, yeah.
Shauna and her family are now just back to normal.
It seems like it.
With like a daughter who's like, okay, my mom and dad covered up a murder and we all got away with it. So, and like, who am I missing? Nat's dead.
Nat's dead, yeah.
So I don't even know where on earth season 3 can even start.
Yeah.
And again, it's from the middle of season 1 on, and I don't think I'm alone here.
Yeah.
I think everyone loves the 1996 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the great number of problems, all the problems perhaps, are with the characters in the present. Great actors, really good when they're together, but the story doesn't match up. And I think it was you, we made Stephen King comparisons a couple of episodes ago, and you made the point that, you know, it's like It, where the first half of It, whether it was 1990 or 2017, I think it was 2017, those movies, those TV miniseries were amazing because you felt genuine, even though you knew some of the kids make it. There was this genuine fear of an evil clown chasing after children.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When they're adults, it just doesn't work as much. The 2019 It Chapter 2 went on and on forever, and I thought it was very unsatisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half of the 1990 miniseries was the same way. And I feel that is the case in this show, where I watch every episode and I'm like, the half that is in the cabin is great. The half that's in the present day is just fine. And so it adds up to that, you know, 65% out of 100 or 70% out of 100, whereas season 1 was 80, 90 plus, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think if we're dealing with numbers and stuff, I think that the 1996 stuff is maybe a 8.5 to 9. Maybe I'm being generous. Maybe it's like a 7.5 to 8.5. That's the wilderness stuff. Then the present day stuff can be like a 6 or so often. And maybe at its height in the present day gets to like an 8. But it like brings down the average of the show as a total.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, we work in education, we're like giving it grades. But you make a very, very good point. Like, I'm thinking about just the stuff that happens in the past in this episode versus just the stuff that happens in the present. And the past stuff, I don't really have a lot to complain about, except for Travis eating Javi. That's kind of the only thing that bothers me. But otherwise, the past stuff I think is very good. And it's basically every single point that you made was really good. And there's even one scene that we forgot to mention about in the past too, where the coach comes back to the cabin and he sees the massacred body of Javi, and he doesn't know what to make of it. And then he runs into Nat, and Nat tells him, like, you should leave. You're a good person. You shouldn't be here. Like, that's great storytelling. That's really good. Sherry was
also, and that was also, he tried to recruit Nat, knowing that they were the skeptics.
Yeah.
And you see at that point that she's kind of moved over.
Yeah.
Or that she's on the verge of moving over to the other side.
Right.
Also, the coach is who starts the fire at the end.
Okay. Do you truly believe that? You think that he really did do that? Like 100%?
I don't think there's, I mean, I'm just following what I saw in the episode. He's outside. He's taking the rope. He's taking one of the hatchets. He's gathering supplies. And then if you watch, I actually paused it and counted. There's a scene where all of the characters are outside the cabin as it's up in flames. And I counted, and there were 9 people. There were 8 girls and Travis.
Okay.
So I don't know if that means that there were some of the girls that got left inside. Because, like, I'm not sure if I saw Aquila. I don't know. Like, I don't know if any of the girls didn't make it out of the cabin when it was on fire. But the coach isn't there.
Right.
So the coach, now that Javi's dead, is the only one who knows about the under tree lair.
Right.
So he's the only one who knows about that. And he's seen outside the cabin gathering supplies. To me, the only logical solution of how does the cabin randomly end up on fire. Also, keep in mind, the doors were blocked. So he probably at this point thinks the only one I could have saved was Nat. She's too far gone. These girls are going to go crazy and kill everybody. I need to get the fuck out of there. And I think we're going to start season 3 in the wilderness with some type of probably a coach killing ceremony once he's discovered. I think he makes it very few episodes, if any, into season 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that they are gonna like track him down and want to get vengeance. But I do think that it's still ambiguous enough to where it might not be that he actually started the fire, because there's no like scene of him like lighting the match outside or like tying up the door or anything like that. It's just he's like gathering fire supplies because he couldn't start a fire in the lair. And so then all of a sudden their cabin's on fire. Like obviously the deduction is like, yeah, he's the one that set the fire. Could most likely be the case. Could be some supernatural bullshit.
He did have the matches too, right?
Oh yeah. He had all the means, absolutely, and the reason to do it. It's just that I feel like it was still ambiguous to where they could play it off like he didn't do it. Maybe Travis did it, or maybe
the wilderness chose.
The wilderness forced them into the wilderness versus in the cabin. I have to say that I liked that last scene a lot. I do think that all the girls survive because this is the kind of show where if there was one girl still trapped in there, she'd be like on fire screaming and they'd be like, oh no, it's Denise. But they wouldn't do that. Right. So I think that
everybody
all survived.
Everybody loves Denise. Who's Denise?
Yeah. She smells pretty good right now. But I did like that last sequence. I liked the music that they played. I liked that it kind of went up into the air, like and panned away from the the fire, kind of making it seem like there's that presence. They've always kind of made it seem like there's a presence around them. But see, that all works. It's just like them coming up with like the couterie or what do you call that shit where it's like everything on a plate? Charcuterie. Thank you. Couterie. That doesn't sound good. They bring that plate over to Travis and he like takes the heart and he bites it and then he puts it in the skillet. It's just like that's too much for me. I don't like how that's handled. But otherwise, the past stuff was pretty solid. It's the future stuff, the present day stuff, and the way it's all resolved that makes me upset with this show. And I like this show. I like the characters. I just like. Okay, let's talk about one thing in general. So they decide that they're going to go along with Lottie in the present day, so that they can essentially get her institutionalized again. So they go through the process of drawing the cards. They even make masks. And it seems like they're trying to trick Lottie. But then once Shauna is picked, it actually seems like maybe they are going to go along with the hunt.
Well, they called off I think Van, being Lottie's most dedicated follower, convinced Thaisa to not call the institution. And so, yeah, I think they were all set at that point to kill Shauna. And, we said last week, when they were all thinking about drinking the poison, we all said last week, who can they realistically kill?
Right.
And we said it could only be a couple characters. It could be Van, because she was kind of just adult Van was just kind of added into the show in the second season.
Yeah.
And she hasn't really done much other than say she has cancer and gotten Thaisa to come to the compound.
Literally. Oh, sorry. I was going to say
Touche.
it's funny that her name is Van because she was shoehorned into the show.
Okay.
Vans. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm there goes our viewership. Go, keep going.
we said it could be Van and Nat.
Right.
And they were the only two that made any sense because, Shauna is positioned as the main character. I don't think you're going to kill off Shauna. Obviously, Misty, Christina Ricci is arguably the biggest star outside of, biggest mainstream star outside of maybe Juliette Lewis.
Right.
So I don't think you're going to kill Misty off. Plus, I think she's like a fan favorite because she's so psychotic.
Right.
Lottie is, all the spiritual stuff comes from Lottie, so it doesn't make sense to kill her. And we haven't resolved any of the double Thaisa yet, so she can't die.
No.
So there were only really two adults that could have possibly died. And so again, 2 episodes in a row, they do the card game. And the person who draws the card doesn't get killed.
Right.
And it's almost as if this like, well, we did the game just like the Wilderness wanted, and somebody died, so I guess the Wilderness will be cool. Like, it's like, I don't know. Like, was this the Wilderness catching up for 25 years of like, we were supposed to have you back in 1996? I don't know.
I do think that there is a whole queen dynamic for this show. They've kind of talked about it literally on the show. Lottie was growing bees, where there's obviously like the queen imagery. The show is called Yellowjackets. There's this hive mentality. There's definitely this queen. They talk about being a queen in this episode, and I like the idea of maybe the role of the queen kind of going between different members of the cast. Like it seemed like Lottie was the queen by the end of last season, but then she's like dethroned by this season, and now it's going to be Nat going to season 3. Like it'll probably go on to somebody else.
Also, did you see what Shauna was writing in her journal at the end?
She said that what's her friend's name that they
Jackie.
Ate? Jackie, right, Jackie. Duh. Jackie made her feel invisible, right? Is that said that, right?
I thought it said something like, I used to think it was Jackie who made me feel invisible, but now, and I think she was almost jealous when Lottie basically says the Wilderness has chosen a new leader. Shauna looked like she was like excited to be picked as the new leader. Yeah. And when Lottie hands it over to Nat, I feel like that Shauna's given, like, has lost a child. She's lost her best friend. She's the killer of the group. She's the one who's always, the butcher of the group. And I feel like she had nothing left anymore after beating up Lottie. And that was like her, like, oh, the Wilderness has chosen me.
Yeah.
And then when she got passed over, I thought that's kind of what she was writing, where it's like, I used to think that it was Jackie because she was the pretty one and, she was the one that made me feel invisible. But now it's, it's something else.
Yeah. There's often on the show throughout both seasons, this kind of jealousy with Nat and various younger Yellowjackets characters, right? Because there's this weird thing with like Travis liking Lottie, and then he also likes Nat. Like that's the time where they're having sex and he's having visions of Lottie. There's that. When Jackie was still alive, she like seduced Travis because like she was butting heads with Natalie. So it kind of makes sense that Natalie is this kind of figure, and I think that the show recognizes that Sophie Thatcher is like one of the breakout stars of the show, right? So they're giving her a lot of stuff to work with. I'm glad you brought all this up because I wanted to point out that when Natalie does get chosen to be the queen, right, or to be the leader, it was weird because having the coach's perspective of looking through the window, it kind of felt like a few different things at once. It kind of felt like, holy shit, my wife is going to make fun of me. Who's the actress who plays the wife in The Godfather? First one, Diane
Keaton.
Diane Keaton, right?
Michael. Oh, when they,
right, with the door,
when everybody's kissing the ring and they shut the door on her.
Right. That's what that felt like in that. But then besides that, just by having it be from the coach's perspective and the fact that he doesn't know what's going on and he sees everyone going up to Nat and like, essentially paying respects to her, it felt like, oh, they're kids. They're just young kids. They don't know what they're doing. They're doing this silly ritual. And I think that that's a really good point. I know that one of the main influences of the show was to make it like Lord of the Flies and how it's like these kids basically trying to be adults, right? And I really felt it in that moment. It's just it's just what they end up becoming as adults that's the annoying part. I'm just trying to think if we haven't covered everything in the present that was annoying. um I think, I mean, it just sucks to see Juliette Lewis die. I like that Misty killed her because like that's Misty's closest friend, I think, out of all of them.
It's certainly the person that Misty has bonded to the most.
Yeah. But
and if you go back to the literal first episode, the first character we ever see remove their mask is Misty. Yeah. And if let's just hypothesize, if Nat does become an Antler Queen or the Antler Queen in season 3, and she's the one ordering the Hunger Games of like, you chose the card, we're gonna hunt you now, and then everybody's eating, maybe like Misty becomes like her like lead warrior, back in 1996,
right?
And it does. I thought Christina Ricci was great in that moment. I don't know. It just feels like they really spent an entire season saving. Like there were 2 characters on the show where they spent an entire season like, we have to save this character, only to then kill them off in the final 2 episodes. Like Javi was gone. He comes back. He says next to nothing. He hints at this like underground lair that he's been in, and then he's like accidentally killed in season 8. And Nat, is about to blow her brains out, and we like revive her character, and we have her go through the compound and like kind of buy into all of this and show that she's becoming a good person again, and she can befriend the girl there and the fish and all these things, only to then kill her off at the end. And I get that like it's this heroic act for her to like save the girl, but it doesn't feel earned. It feels like you said, like the writers were kind of put into a position where, we got to kill somebody. And, we only have 1/3 of these characters can possibly die. So, I don't know.
It's funny because like in the first season, Juliette Lewis Nat was very compelling because she was convinced that Travis was murdered. And so she's investigating. She has purpose. She has agency. And she has that up into the beginning of this season. But then all of a sudden, Lottie gives her the explanation. And it's just like, oh, I guess that's the truth. This person that we have considered to be like, a crazy person and, has done all these crazy things. We're just going to take her word for it and believe it. And then that's it. That's resolved and wrapped up. But that was such a compelling part of the first season, was her love for Travis, how they seem to have this dysfunctional relationship when they came back. And then like, she's the only one that's like, he didn't commit suicide. This is a murder. That's interesting. And then in this season, you mentioned kind of the story beats of what she does. But for me, Juliette Lewis Nat always kind of felt like, oh yeah, we got to talk about her too. Like, don't forget her. It's not like it ever felt really important to the plot.
No, she was just at the compound the whole season. Like, she tries to expose them. It turns out for nothing.
Right.
And then like Christina Ricci shows up to save her and ends up getting drawn in. Like effectively in this season, she's basically just bait to draw the other Yellowjackets to the compound.
That's a really good point. That's a really good
And
point.
it's, I don't know. I'm very torn right now in that I think as a 60-minute episode of television, I think I really kind of enjoyed this episode,
Yeah.
but like maybe like again like a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was much more good than bad.
Yeah.
But what this episode does as a season ender for a season, I think it really does reveal that now that it's over, we can look back and go, this was a fairly disappointing season after how good season 1 was. And it does start to draw those comparisons to Lost, where it really started to kind of go. At the end of season 2 of Lost, I was completely disenchanted.
Right.
I was completely like ready to quit. And I remember saying, I'm going to watch the premiere of season 3.
Right.
And I'm going to basically live or die on that episode.
Yes.
And that episode ended and I was done. And if I'm not married to Athena right now, I never go back and I do not finish Lost.
Yeah.
So am I saying that I'm going to give Yellowjackets 1 episode of season 3? No, because I don't. Unlike Lost, this show actually did tie up loose ends, and it did answer some questions. I just don't particularly like the way it tied up the loose ends. So I don't know what's worse. Like, is it like giving us answers to questions that we don't like, or just giving us all these intriguing questions but never answering them?
That's a really, really good question. And it's funny because I actually was going to beat you to the Lost comparison this time, because I
Nobody
wanted to point
beats me
out,
to a Lost comparison.
yeah, not on this show, that's for sure. But like I was going to say was that like they reached a point, because I watched Lost like straight through, right? Once I got caught up, and I just watched it every season. And I could kind of tell it was kind of hokey and silly. And I was like, oh, I didn't like that decision. I don't like that decision. But I still watched it because I liked the music on the show. I liked the characters. There were aspects of the show that I liked and that kept me watching, even though I was like, yeah, this is kind of silly, or I don't like what they did here. And another comparison, this is going to be like out of left field, but like there's the Arrowverse, right, on the CW, like Green Arrow, or I'm sorry, just Arrow and Flash. And you can tell right away from the beginning, you're like, oh, this is kind of like a CW show. It's pretty cheesy. But I would still watch it in spite of that feeling, because I liked the way those shows started out, at least.
Yeah.
And I went way further with those shows than I probably should have.
But we both, Athena and I loved that up until a couple years ago, where there was just too much to watch.
Yeah.
And it got to a point with me where it's like, if I miss 2 episodes in a row and now I have to watch like 2 hours of catch up for the new episode, I almost am like, I think I'm tapping out. But like we watched seasons of Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow.
Right.
I enjoyed those for a while.
Right. And that's the thing is, right, every network kind of has its own flavor, and every network has its own standard. I think for the most part, HBO usually has shows that are like 8.5 to like 10, right? And
excuse me, you mean Max?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Whoops. Yeah. And but then like every so often you have like a dud show on HBO or Max or whatever the fuck you want to call it, HBO Go. But Showtime, I don't think has as strong a pedigree as HBO. And I feel like Yellowjackets is maybe showing like, it's like, oh, okay, you thought it was this good, but maybe it's not as good.
I'll make a good comparison to a Showtime show.
Sure. Dexter. Right?
The obvious one. Dexter was, for 4 seasons, the best show on television maybe ever. Okay? You can quote me on that. I will put the first 4 seasons of Dexter up against any show ever. And no, I have not watched a bunch of shows. So if you're going to tell me Breaking Bad, I'm sorry, I haven't watched it yet. But those first 4 seasons of Dexter, you've seen it, right? You've seen Dexter?
I've seen the first 4 seasons. Yeah.
Okay. When he finds his baby in the pool of blood, and you find out that the Trinity killer, John Lithgow, killed his wife right before he killed him.
Yeah.
And that's the way that season ends. If they never made another Dexter episode, best show I've ever seen. And from that moment on, there was a very noticeable and steep decline.
Right.
And I stuck with it for 4 more seasons because I love these characters, and I just kept holding out that hope that we were going to get back to the level. And it got to a point where, and I've not watched the new Dexter that came out recently.
Right.
The ending of season 8 was maybe the worst series finale I'd ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, and again, I go back to this idea. If you would have told me after season 4 that we're going to do 4 more seasons, and at the end, you're going to love it. Dexter throws his sister. She's dead. Throws his sister. They ride on a boat into a storm. And then we find out that he became a lumberjack. I'm like, no, like you don't have any idea what you're doing anymore.
Right.
And I'm starting to see that here, like where the ending of season 2 feels so disconnected from the ending of season 1, right. And maybe it's the fans, maybe the reason that fans don't seem to like it is because we all do that thing, that fantasy booking thing. Where would we put the show? Where would we see these characters? And we kind of take over that writer role in our heads.
Correct.
And so maybe we're just disappointed that the writers didn't take our ideas. And that's a fucked up way to look at criticism, where like, I don't like what you did because it's not what I would have done. And it's kind of like it self-aggrandizes our opinion as watchers.
Yeah.
Like you said from the very beginning that the creators of this show have a 5-year plan.
Yes.
So I'm willing to accept that and go, okay, maybe this is, the story ebbs and flows. Maybe this is an ebb and we're going to get back into that flow at the beginning of season 3.
Right. Well, okay. So, but with the 5-year plan, that goes back to what I was saying about like Better Call Saul, right? Because one of the things that they would say, the writers would say, and on Succession too, the writers would say, is that they do have an outline for the way that things would go, but they can like pivot away from it. And I think that probably is where you get a problem with a lot of these shows, these ambitious shows that people invest in so much, is that they probably do have an outline for years or a couple of different seasons. And you probably have this decision every day where it's like, well, we want to hit this beat over here. So to make that work, we have to do this, and this awkward thing, versus like, okay, well, what would they do in this situation? And I think on those shows that I referenced before, Better Call Saul and Succession, it's really truly based on what the character would do in the moment. Whereas with this show, it feels like, oh, well, we have to explain, why they have a necklace on, or like why they start the cannibalism, or, why they have the symbol. Like we have to explain it. It's so important. And it's a testament to how much people love these characters where people do the fantasy booking that you mentioned, because I think that there's also a difference with that. Like, there's assholes like the fucking Zack Snyder people that are like, oh, Superman would do this, or like Batman should murder people. Like, it's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just want dark, violent DC things, right? But then there's people like the viewers of Yellowjackets where it's like, we love the characters. We can kind of feel like what they would do. And so we kind of know where it might go for them. And then when they do something that contradicts that, it just feels wrong. So it's like, it's not necessarily like, oh, we want it to be this badass thing where they're slaughtering each other. It's like, no, I don't know if like Nat would do that. I don't know if Travis would eat his brother like that. That's where I think the friction is.
Yeah,
like, go ahead.
I'm still kind of in awe of the fact that the literal first thing you see in season 1 on the premiere episode is this girl running in the woods. Yeah. She falls onto a spike. She dies. And there's this ceremonial like eating of her. by these masked people, and there's an antler queen, and we've now made it 2 seasons without getting to that moment.
See,
Like,
but I feel
that's
like
a
that moment is like maybe the week that they get rescued. Like I feel like that's the end of the journey, you know? Like I
okay.
don't think that that's like the middle of the journey. I think that that's like we're working towards that.
Okay, because I mean they're now they're without a cabin now, so they don't have a place to stay warm.
Right.
So it's going to be very interesting to see where this season starts, season 3, and what they choose to do with the wilderness. Do they
Yeah.
go into that like primal hunting mode, and or do they are more characters going to freeze to death?
Yeah.
You know, it,
I I think the personal like I think what'll happen is that they will discover the coach in that cave at some point in season 3. Probably not the first episode. Maybe if they're doing something sensational, they find him at the end of the first episode, or they find him and then they set up shop in the cave, which just lends itself more to their like these primitive hunters, these creatures of the wilderness. Now they're living in a fucking cave, right? And they're going to come out of the cave to hunt someone. I think that that's probably the next step. And I do think that what's going to happen is everything's going to thaw and they're going to try to like find a way home, and there'll be a conflict of like, do we go home? This is our new home now. And there'll be some
yeah.
butting heads there. Can we go home after what we've done? And then the winter will come again. And I'm thinking that that's probably like end of season 4 going into season 5.
I also want to know, like, I want to know exactly who makes it out of the woods. We know 7 characters make it out. We know it's the 6 girls and Travis.
Right.
But that leaves at least 3 other girls.
Right.
The coach.
Right.
And like, so are those 4 deaths that we can count on?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So like, or are they gonna introduce a new van where like, oh, it turns out Aquila is still alive, or it turns out that I don't think Mari is still alive because I think she's the one that goes face down on the spikes in the first episode.
Yeah.
But there's random hat girl now.
Right. I don't think we're going to get more survivors in the present day. What I do think, though, is that we're going to get rescued in the past, and then they're going to have to sort of figure out what to do when they come back to the regular world, and they're going to adjust. And that might be like, go ahead.
No, that's what you're saying. Are they going to show this middle area?
Yes. I think that we won't see like a lot of it. Like, I don't think we'll see years worth of it, but I do think that probably by like season 5, they'll be back before the show ends. And
I hope we're alive by then.
Yeah. There's a writer's strike pushing everything back and stuff too. Right?
I know.
But I guess just to kind of wrap it up so we can promote our stuff too. It sounds like you and I maybe are on the same page where, season 2 was a little bit disappointing, not as good as season 1. We like the characters and the show itself, but making us want to take a chance on season 3, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have a while because that, like I said, that got delayed because of the writer's strike. So
yeah.
So then, until then, what do we have going on our channel?
I have a good video up. I did a recap of the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. They premiered last weekend. Really good. Like, the way they do it on Shudder is great. And it's a 90-minute award show that gives awards for all the best horror of 2022. One of the best years of horror. We even said, like, our year-end review, our top 10 took 2 episodes and almost 3 hours of recording. So if you want to check that out, I have that video up. And other than that, I've really just been doing a bunch of horror shorts, watching horror movies, reviewing them. Now, we have a 3-day weekend. Charlotte and I are going to be watching Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. which
Yes.
is our last Nightmare on Elm Street movie because there was never a remake. I don't know what you're talking about. And then Charlotte and I are going to do a video that she always loves to do. And that is when we finish a franchise, we're going to do a franchise ranking. So we're going to do that. So far, she had only watched the Nancy Thompson trilogy, 1, 3, and 7. So we've since caught up with 2, 4, and 5. And now we only have part 6 left.
Awesome. Okay. And that kind of ties in with what we were talking about doing too, which is like a Wes Craven, just sort of catching some of the Wes Craven movies we haven't discussed in this channel so far.
Yeah. Going back to like late 70s, early 80s, non-Scream, non-Nightmare on Elm Street,
Right.
Craven movies, which I'm hoping gives us a chance to talk about my favorite Wes Craven movie, The People Under the Stairs.
I would love to watch that with you. Yeah, and discuss it too. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the original Hills Have Eyes. I have seen Last House on the Left. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. I haven't seen Shocker. Yeah,
Shocker is such a great bad movie.
Yeah,
and it is so much fun, and it's always at the top of my list of horror movies that could and should maybe be remade if we're going to do remakes.
Yeah.
So I would love to rewatch that with you. There's a ton. There's also Wes Craven did a bunch of movies in the 80s, early 80s, like Deadly Friend, which was very weird. Deadly Blessing, I believe, with Sharon Stone.
Oh,
is
okay.
one, which I saw once when it was on Shudder.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things. We did a review of a deep dive of Serpent in the Rainbow, which you can find on the channel. We did that back when we were doing cursed films on Shudder.
Yes.
So yeah.
Maybe we'll cover Music of the Heart.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Meryl Streep and Wes Craven. Maybe the most iconic pairing since Sam Raimi did For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner.
There you go. That'd be a good April Fool's if we covered those.
That would be amazing. There was that incredibly bizarre stretch of the late 90s where all the horror directors that we loved started making family-friendly dramas.
Yeah.
That was a weird time. Music of the Heart and For Love of the Game coming out like very soon after each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot to cover with Wes Craven, and so that's what we're doing now. But if you guys have suggestions too, I like to do this on my other channel, Comic Books Transformed. We like just hearing from you guys. I mean, obviously, there are people that watch these videos consistently. I know, Chris, you're watching it right there. Just let us know what you want us to cover, because Yellowjackets is over for now.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, Yellowjackets season 2 is over. If there's another horror or genre style show that we can do episodic breakdowns of, my brother-in-law really went all out to tell us at a barbecue how great the show From is.
Oh, I've heard of that too. Yeah.
Not to make a Lost connection, but it does star Harold Perrineau, who was Michael.
Yes.
And it's on, I think the first season is free on the Roku channel, and season 2 is on Epix. So I don't know if you have that, but
I don't.
we can maybe we could check out season 1, see if we like it, maybe talk about that. We'll see. But if anybody listening has watched From, tell us what you think. But my brother-in-law was like, you guys need to watch this. You will love it. So
yeah.
all right.
Dude, I like that idea. Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. That might be our next thing that we dive into after Wes Craven. Yeah, cool, man. So you guys make sure that you are subscribed to our channel. Let us know what you thought of the finale of season 2 of Yellowjackets, and we will keep buzzing.